Seminoles are 7-0 for the first time since I've ever been around you, Mark. So I don't really have much to be upset about. Not like much of our fan base. Like, I don't know, we're acting kind of weird right now. It's a little strange position for everybody, but I'm excited and ecstatic.
Well, not everything can be perfect. So, they and other fan bases need to realize that there are scholarship players that are pretty damn good athletes on the other side. So it's not going to be 50-0 every week. So what seems to be the problem?
When I really listen, it's not just that, it's a lot of fan bases. When I listen to what people say versus what they expect, they've put this narrative in their head and they'll just cement it in their head. So, like, people will say Jordan Travis has regressed. And I don't know if they necessarily know what the word regress, like, and I'm not knocking anybody. I don't think they know the actual definition of regress. They know how to use it in the sentence, but they don't know the definition of it. That means you got worse. But when you show them that up to this point, last year, he's literally gotten better in every statistical category, and we've seen drops, they say, oh, well, it just looks that way. Well, then you ask based upon what? And then what happens is there'll be one or two bad plays, and that proves your theory. So they stick with it. And I'm like, guys, that's not even it. I do this for a living. And that is just not an enjoyable way to watch football. Football is ebbs and flows. Like you said, the other team has scholarship players too. And it's just sometimes you're running fast and just human makes mistakes. But when you got a quarterback the last two games who's been throwing for over 75% completion rating, he's had 2 interceptions on the entire season. He's one of the best quarterbacks statistically in the nation. And then you look at what's happened with Caleb Williams, Michael Penix Jr., Bo Nix. All of them have had bad games, whereas Jordan Travis has literally been consistent. His worst game was Southern Miss, which we beat like 65-10. And then you hear people talk about our defensive coordinator fire Coach Fuller because somebody makes one big play, but then you have to remind them very few teams have scored on us in the second half. And then this statistic came out that shows that quarterbacks' average completion percentage is 50.2%. And there's been 3 passing touchdowns scored on Florida State all year. And you have to tell them, if we fired this guy, he would be hired so fast that it would make your head spin. And it's narratives that we just can't let go. And I'm like, gosh, be a fan. Most of y'all haven't had this for 5 years. Where what's crazy is, Mark, and who would have ever thunk this? Even to the start of Mike Norvell. In theory, there's just as good of a chance that Florida State guarantees themselves a spot in the ACC championship with the victory over Wake Forest as Miami can play themselves into still having an opportunity. Like, the rest of the conference is up in the air. But if Duke, North Carolina, Louisville, like, if they lose, like, for example, if Duke beats Louisville, Florida State, and North Carolina loses, Florida State has guaranteed themselves a shot into the ACC championship. When have we been able to say that in week 8? I don't even know if we could have said that when we won the Natty in 13 or in 14. Guarantee this, if you win this week and you win against Pitt, now it always means something for the Miami game because that's a rivalry game. You literally, if you don't lock it up week 8, you lock it up week 9. And every goal you've had, and that's just it's just wild and amazing to think, people are still, like, people even had these thoughts. So, yeah, it's an amazing season. I've been, like I said, or like now it's I-9. I don't know if y'all have I-9 up where you're at, but we have this thing called, my son plays it. It's great. It's like YMCA ball, rec ball. Pop Warner. Everybody gets 4 plays. Like, everybody has, now it's Jordan Travis throws the ball to Keon Coleman and Johnny Wilson too much. He needs to throw the ball to the freshman that just got here that we didn't even know who he was, if he was ever coming, or if he was real, or these guys. Like, I was like, do you even hear what you're saying? We're throwing to the 2 NFL wide receivers too much. And then when you look at it, and I asked teams, like, I'm not teams, people, do y'all watch other teams? I bet if we looked at Ohio State right now, Marvin Harrison Jr. probably gets a vast majority of the targets and probably another wide receiver. Then everybody else kind of gets in where they're fitted. Nobody has like a team with everybody has 12 receptions. Like that means nobody's good. That means you got a bunch of guys that are okay, but you don't have a number one wide receiver. It's just I'm like we're nitpicking about stuff and not learning how to be again 7-0 is very difficult to beat, but I guess that's the beauty. I guess that's the new way of the world. We haven't been winning since social media has really taken off. So maybe I got to get used to that.
Yeah, there's something else you brought up there that reminds me of another thing that we hear as the season progresses, and it's worse in college football than any other sport because the best teams only play a handful of games at most that are really challenging games. So you take the top 5, 6 teams in the country, they're playing 3, 4 games at a time where it's okay. Unless they slip up and make it a difficult game, they're going to win by 30, win by 40, win by 30, win by 40. Then we're looking forward to them playing them, and them. And so what we see is that there's this, okay, Florida State opens against LSU. There's all this anticipation. This is an amazing matchup. This is going to prove a lot. We've been waiting for 6, 8 months. LSU's a really good team. Florida State goes out there and not only they don't squeak by with a last-second field goal, they take care of business. And then the response to that by most people, whether they're Florida State fans or just college football fans, is, well, LSU must not be that good. They must not be as good as we thought they were. And then they beat Clemson. Well, they may not be as good as they thought they were. And we also have to consider with Clemson, Clemson's having a really down year for them. They probably were a better team and more focused and ready to go and at that fever pitch playing Florida State than what we're seeing as the season progresses and their hopes and dreams are being dashed. So there's this where you can't find any good wins in the country because everybody's, well, no, they weren't that good. And so they just discount everybody's wins.
I mean, because like LSU has the number one offense in the nation. Yes. Like it's kind of like because now it's well, you beat them in September. It's like, well, that's when we played them. What are we talking about here? Everything has a counter, but again, and it's all emotional responses. It's nothing tangible, like nothing that we can actually argue. Like, I mean, yeah, maybe they are a better team in October, but I don't really know that. People predicted us to lose. So like, I mean, so what are we saying? It's just like Boston College. I mean, Boston College played us tough. I could say at the end of the year that maybe Boston College was a better team than we thought they were. But right now, still a game we probably should have blown them out. But I just think it's because people expect blowouts. So like when you had the 13 national championship team, they were just really dominant. They blew everybody out until they met Auburn. And that's when they did. And then 14 was so good that they could spot teams' points and then still come back and be undefeated. But you also had, at that time, one of the better quarterbacks you've ever had in your program history with 3 wide receivers that were over 1,000 yards and a tight end that got drafted. So you had a lot more recruited talent, and as opposed to what we have now, even though these are extremely talented teams. And then when you look at the Duke game, we played extremely sloppy. And I say Virginia Tech, we had times. Syracuse, not really, but people find fault in Syracuse. But you have times where you just see things happen, like a drop ball happens. I told somebody it's hard to go 75% completion on air. Like that means like with nobody covering you. So like you're going to have a drive or two where it kind of stalls out, where it doesn't go. But that's why I've been doing some things more on my channel that I haven't normally done before. I like talking FSU with you. I like talking with Chris with Sporadics, but I haven't necessarily had an FSU just focus on my own channel. And I still don't, but what we do is film breakdowns because I'm learning that a lot of people just truly don't know what they're watching. Now, at the sacrifice of me getting like I can't get paid off of it because ESPN obviously owns the rights, somebody else owns it, but we're going through the condensed version of games. And then tomorrow, which I'm glad we'll have, I think you said we have somebody from Wake on. I want to know about Wake so I can know who I need to watch when I'm watching some of the highlights. So I'll take 4 of the ESPN highlights or the ACC network highlights of Wake Forest. They're all typically about 5 to 10 minutes. And then we'll kind of go over the best defensive plays, the best offensive plays. And I'm going to show people, like, this is literally how people watch the game who've played the game. And what we're looking for and what should happen and what could happen and how it's supposed to work. And because I really think a lot of people, one, they stop watching it for fun, or you're watching it for fun and then trying to have a take. And I think takes have become so polarizing because of the attention that people get, that we just forget that sometimes cats miss the pass because they suck. Or sometimes the offensive lineman missed the block because the guy in front of him was 6'5", 275 and runs a 4.5 and a 40. It's probably going to be a first-round draft pick. Like, sometimes, excuse my French, but sometimes shit happens. But sometimes it's all about scheme. So, is like when we watch film, and when I started doing this, that's really when I started getting aggravated at narratives. Like, people were saying Jay Trav's not attacking the middle of the field. Well, we watch film, and you know what I'm seeing? Jay Trav's attacking in the middle of the field. He's just not throwing it to guys that people want. Because like a post or a slant, that's attacking the middle of the field. But those are the things. But it's fun because we're winning at the end of the day. And that's what I think the big takeaway is, even from the fans' critiques. Like, for me, I'm like, all right, we're scoring 30 points. We're averaging 20. I think this season, like 20 plus points per opponent. That's how bad we've beaten everybody. 3 scores is a dominant performance. And we still haven't played our best football. That gives me hope that blowouts are coming, as opposed to me saying, oh, we're not that good, and having to lie about being afraid of Duke, Syracuse. And again, I give Wake Forest respect because they beat us 3 years in a row. So I don't like talking trash about people who got who have the better end of me right now.
A lot of good points there. And we're talking about the film breakdown coming up Thursday night at 7, right?
It'll be, if you're a member of Den Media Group, it'll actually be 11 a.m. There's a link for you to join, but it posts live. Well, not live, but instant premiere on YouTube. It'll post at about at 6 p.m.
Okay. Den Media Group. We'll drop the link in the chat as we do each and every week, folks. And you should be able to find it on your own, but we make it easy for you. We'll put the link in the chat, and you track that over to James' channel, Den Media Group, right here on YouTube, 6 p.m. premiere, the Wake Forest breakdown on Thursday. I was going to go into a long story to kind of prove your point, but we'll not go there tonight. Groupthink, yes, is a dangerous thing, and it's people don't think for themselves. And I get it. We can't all know everything and see everything. And so we trust certain people and we start believing the narrative. And many times that's not the case. That's just not the truth and the reality. The thing I'll hit you with, James, is a lot of Florida State fans got all over me. I did an analysis right after the game, and I simply made the statement, and I was very clear about this off the top. Just as I just said off the top of this show, Florida State proved to be deeper, faster, stronger, more talented, all those things, clearly. So I made a comment, though, at one point in the third quarter, I thought if you didn't know who these two teams were, you could say Duke's playing better right now. And my goodness, people just went crazy. So at the point that Riley Leonard gets hurt, even though he's not having a great game, he gets hurt. They're up by a field goal. They're inside the 10. And then the backup quarterback comes back. They take a gamble and risk the throw to the end zone. He misses it, although he's under a lot of duress. So it wasn't a wide open throw. The player was breaking free in the corner, but under duress. And they went for the gamble instead of the 6-point lead, and they come away, and then Florida State just takes off. what was your thought at that point in the game before all that transpired? You know, a lot happened there that changed the momentum about how good Duke is and how Florida State was playing.
Well, what I thought Duke was, and if you've watched any of their film, Duke played, I hate to say, Duke football. Not necessarily, and I understand your statement. So it's not necessarily that I would have thought they were the better team. It's kind of like when you watch a boxer and you hear somebody say, I'm going to make them fight my fight. Boston College did this as well. Slow the game down, use your running game, and make it not a dirty game as like cheating or anything, but just make it an ugly game, make them make mistakes and then capitalize on it. Because that's what Duke did. And they did a great job of that. The first drive, they got a stop on 4th and 1, which probably could have been a better call, but they got the stop on Jordan Travis. And our fans talk about holds, part of the game. It was some bad stuff, but whatever. I'm not going to go that route. Duke scored on the opening possession, a touchdown. After that, they did absolutely nothing else on offense. And that's not me being arrogant. That's just the truth. The other touchdown came from a pick six where Jay Trav, like, he shouldn't have thrown the pass there, but Keon Coleman tries to catch it with his body because he's in traffic, bounces off of his chest right into the hands of a Duke Blue Devil, and he goes in for the score. And then outside of that, everything else was field goals. But when you saw that drive, even like I saw a Duke fan say Florida State purposely tried to hurt Riley Leonard, which that's just fan talk. And my response to him was, maybe so. But if the offensive line would have at least pinched any defensive lineman from Florida State, they wouldn't have had a chance to hit him. And if you watched it, at that point, Florida State's depth was starting to take hold on Duke. Like the line, there was pressure getting there. Like there was a lot of penetration. And Florida State wasn't even really blitzing because that's not really what Florida State does. They play man coverage. Like they knew they didn't have anything to beat the man coverage with Florida State. And I think Leonard is a much more gutsy guy, but he did have better control. I'm gonna be honest with you. I don't know if he makes that throw because they were getting back there, but he has a better chance than that freshman. I would have kicked the field goal. But the freshman also the week before, you know, he made that pass in that amount of yards. He threw a great pop pass to the tight end in the end zone. One of his first plays was a touchdown against NC State. So they figured they had the chances. But after that, and seeing what our offense was doing, moving the ball, just stopping themselves, I was like, oh yeah, this is gonna get fun real quick. And that it did. And you know, they drove down, scored, stopped them again, drove down, scored again, and that was basically the rest of the game.
So Florida State, 2-touchdown favorite, ends up covering. They take out Duke 38-20. And if anyone wants to discount Duke, man, they took Notre Dame down to the final play. They had a 4th and 16. If they would have been able to get off the field like any reasonable defense typically does about 95% of the time, they win that game. They take out Clemson by 3 touchdowns. I understand, everybody. Clemson's down. I get it. They're still a talented team. There's no doubt about that. They've barely lost all these games, and they're just a good football team. They're not great. They're not super talented, but they're a really good football team. They're probably one of the 20 best teams in America.